Thank you, Naga. So generally in this, in the lockdown, I've actually been, I've been really well. I've been sort of feeling very contented, and I've also been feeling sort of very connected to others. And I've had, I feel like I've had a lot of really good communication, and there's been a sort of simplicity. There's been a kind of simplicity to life, and a sort of depth to, a kind of depth to my sort of communication and overall experience. And in a way, it feels a sort of blueprint for how I'd like to live my life. And I think in some ways it's sort of made me think, well, why aren't I living a kind of quieter life? And there's a variety of reasons for that, and some are positive and some are less positive. I mean, there's always a sort of element of distraction in the way I fill my time. But yeah, I mean, overall, I've found things really positive. But I did want to talk a little bit about fear, actually, because it is something that has been sort of present. It has been present in my experience over the last sort of month or so, and there have been times when I've really touched a sort of what feels like a very kind of deep, just a very kind of deep sense of fear, and I think it's somehow linked to a sense of the kind of the enormity of what's been happening, and I get a real sort of bodily sense of I just don't want this to be happening, and also I get a very strong sense that I don't want those who I love and I'm very close to be kind of living through this kind of experience. I was going to a few years ago. This is going back quite a few years, sort of 10 or 11 years ago. I went sailing across the Atlantic with a friend, and there were just the two of us in this little 30-foot boat, and it was quite in some ways it was quite a kind of traumatic experience because it was a very hard trip. And one of the things I really took from it though was just something around not having control. Not having control of how things are. And Karunanatha talked quite a lot about this. Quite a lot about this kind of idea of control. And there is, of course, a sense at the moment where we really don't know what is happening, and we don't know how things are going to work out. And at some deep level, I just find that I just have this real sort of yearning for things to be fine. I want to live in the kind of normal, prosperous, comfortable society that I'm used to. And actually, I want my security in all the ways that it kind of normally manifests. But actually, interestingly, I've also found this kind of sense of fear to be a blessing. And part of me thinks, well, why wouldn't I, or why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we be kind of fearful? Because this is there is something very unknown about things at the moment. And in a way, a lot of what we take for, a lot of the kind of norms of society feel like they have just been sort of swept away, and it does feel like, you know, the ground. The ground below our feet is kind of a bit kind of unsteady or something, and yeah, my ego feels quite. I think my ego feels quite threatened by this lack of control. It finds it quite disconcerting. It feels like the self at times is kind of threatened and being undermined. Yeah, but actually, I also think that it's good, you know, if we're feeling kind of anxious or fearful about the situation, that actually it's really good to be in connection with that. Yeah, to be in connection with that kind of fear. And actually, generally, I have this feeling of just wanting to be kind of emotionally connected with what is happening. Yeah, and kind of feeling. I mean, I think Stephen Arger was sort of talking about, you know, so well, how he kind of engages with what's happening in the news, etc. And part of me, I don't want to become kind of obsessive about it, but actually part of me does have quite a strong feeling that I ought to have a sense of what is happening to people. Yeah, and I think there's also something very human about people's responses to what is going on. And you know, at the Clacton class that I go to on a Thursday night, you know, we finish our meditation at just before 8, and we all go outside. Well, I go outside. I guess most of us are doing it, and you know, we do this thing where people are clapping for the NHS, and I just find it. I just find it kind of quite a moving experience to see the kind of neighbours out there with their pots and pans, kind of banging them. And, yeah. But also, I think, yes, so sort of out of this fear, I think one of the things that has really struck me is having a strong sense of what I can really trust. And you know, we talk a lot about, you know, the Dharma and going for refuge, and you know, the Buddha's teachings being the kind of only safe refuge. And you know, sometimes we can have those conversations and they seem a bit kind of abstract, but at the moment, yeah, I just have a very sort of strong sense of that. Yeah, there's a line in the Heart Sutra. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. And there's something about sort of for me, there's something about seeing that the sense of fear, in a way, is a delusion. You know, it arises out of our kind of sense of separateness. So one of the things I've been working with quite strongly is just working with a sense of it being okay that things aren't okay. You know, they are just as they are, and I can't influence them. And actually, although things feel quite uncomfortable at times, you know, that in a way is a natural response. And actually, it's, yeah, the kind of idea that it's okay for things not to be okay. And something else I was going to say, sort of in terms of sort of working with uncertainty and fear, is just trying to be with the kind of underlying energy of those emotions, and being able to be able to kind of directly turn towards those feelings without kind of, I mean, the habitual response may be to kind of busy ourselves or kind of deny their existence. And there's a real sort of wisdom in just being able to turn towards those uncomfortable feelings. And there's a kind of freedom in doing that as well, because the alternative is we get caught up in like storylines. So, you know, we have an uncomfortable feeling and we habitually go off into creating a story. And if we can just be with that kind of underlying energy, then it really is much more productive. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, the story is nearly always worse than the experience of the feelings. Yeah. Something else that I think has been sort of important for me is just really staying connected to myself and trying to have a strong sense of how I am. I mean, I think it's quite easy for the mind. I mean, actually, I partly find it because I spend a lot of time for work on the computer. I find that my mind can get quite kind of fragmented, and it's just been really useful to just be aware of the need to really understand how I am. You know, what at a sort of at as deep a level as possible. Yeah, how am I? Yeah, and also, I'm just going to say a couple more things. There's something about being as engaged as possible with what is going on. You know, to be engaged with people's suffering, but also to have a sense that there is actually, you know, there are actually things that we can be rejoicing in at the moment. You know, I mentioned the kind of NHS thing earlier, but I mean, it seems to me that kind of collectively we're much more united than we were this time a year ago, with all that was, I'm not even going to mention it, but, you know, all that was going on. And you know, this time last year, and to me, that's a real. There is a real feeling of connection, and just perhaps just finally, I'll say, you know, something else I've noticed is a real quality in communication, particularly with my family, actually. And normally we just kind of all caught up in the kind of busyness of life. And it's a bit like some of the stuff has, yeah, just been stripped away. And it feels like sort of collectively we are more receptive. And you know, where and there's a kind of openness, and I've just experienced some, you know, really quite sort of touching communication with my family. Actually, it's like yeah, there's a sort of veneer that has kind of been stripped away or something. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And sorry, just one very final point. I think actually also, and perhaps this is something, you know, all of us may experience as people who are practicing, is actually I have had quite a sense that of a kind of strength in my practice, and how actually I can help other people. You know, I can really use that strength and kind of give it to other people. And I've just noticed that, you know, a lot of the kind of a lot of my kind of Buddhist friends, there's a kind of solidity. There's a kind of solidity to them, and I think there's we shouldn't underestimate what we can give to others. At this time. So yeah, I think that's probably me out of time.